Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to this week's episode of Woo Girl Radio, where I, your host, Lionheart Leo, talk all things woo-woo, spiritual awakening, shadow work, manifesting, all that good stuff. I'm really excited to be able to be here with you and have this beautiful chat and share with you today's episode, which is about medicine horses and working with the Chiron medicine horse herd. So we filmed today in the actual labyrinth and space where these medicine horses live in the 3D in real life. These are real horses. I sometimes refer to them as spirit horses because I feel like they just are so good for the spirit. And we are joined today by Halliday, who runs the labyrinth and the horse herd and is a facilitator to help folks kind of understand what the horses are presenting, how to work with them safely, and how they can help you kind of gently address the things that might not be working in your life, as well as kind of helping you step into a better, happier, stronger, more aligned version of yourself. A lot of the time when I've worked with the herd, they gently bring up kind of the things that I'm sensing are under the surface, but I don't really want to address. But instead of it being this really tough, like shadow work moment of really going through it, they gently support and bring things up and show me in a gentle way through kind of metaphor and the behavior while we walk together. And then in that moment, I can understand, oh, I'm doing this in my day-to-day life. So how are the horses showing me I need to fix this? A lot of the time this will present in ways like feeling like I'm a jerk or a bitch or all those things for maybe setting a boundary or trying to move forward in like a work situation or something. And a lot of the time the horses won't move unless you are clear and aligned in your intention. So unless I'm picturing in my mind, okay, we're going to move to this rock, and all of my intention and will through a heart-centered place is directing the horse and me towards this rock, the horses tend to be a little stubborn and won't move. Sometimes they ask you to get into joy. Sometimes they show you kind of the places where you might get distracted. I get distracted a lot by how cute they are and how soft their noses are. So it's a good reminder that if I've decided to walk the labyrinth, I need to hold space for that decision to move forward. And those are the kinds of things that the medicine horses can bring up for us. It's really gentle and a loving way to kind of get a quick reading on where you're at in your life, because horses do not lie to us. They really take us in the moment because they are herd animals and they are so psychic. So Halliday helps to break that down for us even more. She is a wonderful psychic card reader, so she does wonderful card readings. She also is a shiatsu practitioner. I believe she does massage sometimes as well, and all sorts of other things. So she really takes an array of knowledge and helps us as we work with these animals. So I'm really excited to share with you what we're chatting about today. The goal of this podcast is to really make you feel like you're with friends. I know as spiritual light workers, empaths, sensitive souls, it's hard to feel like we belong in all spaces, or maybe you don't have a friend you can just call up for a spiritual cup of coffee and really talk about the real deal of what's going on in your woo-woo spiritual life. So the goal of this podcast is to make you feel like you're having a cup of coffee with us, you're on a road trip with us, wherever you're listening to this or watching this, that you're among friends. So I'm really excited. Please make sure you subscribe and make sure that you hit that bell if you're on YouTube. If you are on Spotify or Apple Music or anywhere, please give us a review, share it with a friend. And if you feel like booking a reading with myself or Halliday, all of that will be linked down below. Halliday's Medicine Horse Farm is in Coombs, BC. And as we film today, we were outside. So I've never done this before for the podcast, and we had a few technical difficulties with the mic. So we're kind of popping in at the point in Halliday's story where she's talking about getting her first horse named Prince. And unfortunately, Prince passed away about 11 months after she got him. He was an older horse, but they had a really strong connection. And then she was led to find Spirit. And Spirit is the leader of the herd that she has right now. So there are 6 horses there. Spirit's the leader. We have Topaz, who is the greeter. He's about 135 in horse years. He's kind of the brown horse you'll see in the background if you're watching the YouTube video. And then we also have Flair, who is the balancer. She's a black and white spotted pony, or kind of a chestnut brown and white spotted pony. The other female of the herd represents the divine feminine. Her name is Belle. She's lovely. She is a retired carriage horse that has a wonderful life now and is treated very nicely. We also have Blue, or Blue Star, who is the divine masculine representation of the herd. And then we also have Sorrento, who I love dearly. I love them all, but Sorrento was the first horse I ever worked with. He is the heart of the herd and always used to give me little nuzzles with his velvety nose on my shoulder when we worked together, which is lovely. So if you're interested in labyrinths and crystals, manifestation, we talk all these things in today's episode, and I hope it just brings you so much love and value today. So hit that subscribe, and here we go right into the episode. Thanks for being here, and I love you so much.
Um, 11 months, and then he passed on, and those 11 months were life altering, life changing for me. And I really would encourage you, if you have those opportunities in life when something is presenting to you as a choice, and yet everything logical around you is saying, oh, you don't have the money, or you don't have the space, or what are you thinking, you're not going to have the time, to really just step back into oneself and follow forward on your path while speaking it out loud. So there's this is why prayer is so interesting, right? Is that it's this opportunity to have a verbal connection with our manifesting or our goals, right? Which is a pretty important thing to do. So anyway, so there he came. He was there for 11 months, and profound connection with him. And then he died, and I thought, oh boy, and I don't want another horse, and what was I thinking, and so on. So my daughter's horse was needing to be retired, or her little pony, and so I was looking for a horse for her, and no matter what I entered into Google, up came Spirit Prince Bliss, who is my herd leader right now, and it didn't matter. I'd be like, appendix or quarter horse cross on Vancouver Island, and bing, up he'd come. And here he was up in the Kispiox Valley, like northern BC. He worked at a hunting lodge, and he'd had an accident that had I'm going to segue. I hop around a little bit.
I do too. It's all good. Yeah.
All right.
I can feel the connections forming.
Okay.
So yeah.
Excellent. So medicine horses, or companion animals, and companion animals have this beautiful connection with us that is different than other animals, right? They're here really to form companionship with us and to assist us as we assist them, right? So we get to step into stewardship, appropriate stewardship, and they get this opportunity to do their work too. So each of the medicine horses that form part of my herd, and there's 6 of them right now, they each have their unique story of how they got here. And Spirit's story of how he got here is he was this awesome pack horse in a hunter's lodge in the Kispiox Valley, way in northern BC. And he reached the point where he wanted a career change. And it's often difficult for companion animals to have a career change without putting their actual lives at risk, and they often do. They'll often really make that movement forward. And so basically what he did was fell down a cliff. And so at any point he could have been euthanized, right? But no, he fell down the cliff, and they loved him so much. He's such a good horse. And so they gave him the time to heal. So he healed up, and they started him as a pack horse again, and they'd take him out into these hunting trips, and he'd pull up lame a couple of weeks in, again, putting his life at risk of being euthanized, and just determined that he's going to change his path, right? Mm-hmm. And so at that point, they decided to try to find another home for him. And at that point, after Prince had died, and I was looking for this horse for my daughter, there I am in Google, right? Horse, Vancouver Island, bing, up would come Spirit, bing. No matter what I entered into Google, he came up. So I could tell that that was one of those times where I just need to go for it, right? There I was again, like, how am I going to get this horse down from, northern BC? What am I thinking, right? I basically, I just did it, and I don't know how else to explain it. So there comes a point where you just do it. Yeah. You put one foot in front of the other, and you just do it, right? Yeah. And so what happened was I was talking to them. I said, I don't really know how to to get him here. Oh, and this whole thing around Google, a couple of years ago, so Spirit and I have been doing this work since 2006, right? And a couple of years ago, someone said to me, well, probably the person that was selling him put a bunch of keywords in that was like Vancouver Island, blah, blah. And I said, who cares, right? So there's this thing like where we can logic ourselves right out of the magic of anything, but they can actually combine and exist together perfectly. Yes, they might have entered keywords in that were Vancouver Island, but it brought them here, right? And so just this reminder to consider that there's many different ways to connect with manifesting in reality, and they're not meant to cancel each other out. One of the horses will have they'll have a horse poo, and it's like, yeah, they're horse pooping, but you know what? They're also balancing their root chakra. Like, they're able to do more than one thing at a time, just as we are, right? So when we look at different streams of information coming into us from that stuff, it's important, I think, not to use one to cancel out the other. To look at the full bouquet or the full flower, right? And realize each of those petals is just as beautiful as the other. Right?
Yeah.
There's no grading of what's better than the other. Is it better that they put the keywords in that they got here, or is it better that no matter what I entered into Google brought this horse into my life? It doesn't matter. The reality is that they're all intertwined, just like that beautiful flower. And I'm just thinking of that beautiful bouquet that you brought me. I think it's really symbolic of the work that's done here.
Yeah.
That concept of a bouquet of flowers, so beautiful. Anyway, so back to what we were talking about. So there I was, a single parent, and my daughter was, she was about, I don't know, 9 or 10, I can't remember. And so I said to them, I don't know how to get him down here. And they said, well, there's a guy going to the horse auction. Why don't you see if they can stall him, which means putting him in the stall, those little, I don't know if people know what stalls are, but we'll just leave it at that, and see if they'll let you rent a stall for a while. And so I thought that was a great idea. I contacted the auction in outside of Vancouver and said, hey, look, I've got this horse coming down from the Kispiox Valley. Is there any way that I could rent a stall from you until I can find a way to get him to Vancouver Island? And they said, yeah, sure, no problem, right? And so down came Spirit on this horse trailer, and I sort of walked on the ferry, and a friend picked me up at the other side, and I was going to go over and just get him settled in his stall and head back to Vancouver Island. My mom was down looking after my daughter for me. And so I got to the auction and met Spirit, and then I went into the office and I said, hey, I'm here, and which stall should I put him in? And they said, oh, well, you bought him here? And I said, well, no. And they said, well, you can't leave him here. And so I went out into the parking lot and had like about a 15-second cry, like, oh, what was I thinking? Yada, yada. And my friend who was there, she just said, okay, I'm going to go grab the mic of the auctioneer and I'm going to find you something to make this work. And so just on the wings of her beautiful support, I said, let's just go to the parking lot and see if I can hitch a ride with my horse and I. And so that's what we did. I went to the parking lot, and I think it was the second person I talked to was this amazing woman. She's just there to watch the auction. And I said, is there any chance that you could drive me and my horse over to Vancouver Island? And she said, yes. And she said, as long as you get me back on the last ferry. So I got in the back of the truck, and my friend said she'll just never forget that picture in her mind of me sort of looking out the back window at her like, bye, with it going off in this strange truck with this horse in the back of the... So I get on the ferry, and this will give you an indication of how when you're just going to make it happen, you're going to focus on it happening. It never even occurred to me to consider things like money, right? So I get on the ferry and I'm like, I phoned my mom, my cell phone, and I said, hi, Mom. And she said, yes. And I said, do you have your checkbook with you? And she said, yes, I do. And I said, can I borrow some money? And she said, yes, you can. And so that's how, to pay for this woman to bring the horse over and to get her back on the ferry. So that, a lot of people would say, what were you thinking? What if that hadn't worked out? But it never crossed my mind that it wouldn't. So once I set that in flow, once I got that happening, I didn't question, right? And so it was anytime we're creating this concept or this movement toward, especially for others, right? For the horse, for, another person or whatever, we can really, really just hang on for the ride. And so, anyway, we get to my place. I give the lead rope to my daughter of her horse. It was going to be her horse at that point. And because I would never have done this for myself, right? At that point in my life, it was like, I'm willing to do this for my daughter's horse who was presenting in Google perpetually. And so I grabbed my mom's check. Thank you, Mom. And we went to the bank, and the bank worked properly. I gave her her money, and she got the last ferry back to Vancouver. And so this beautiful angel with her horse transport truck and trailer, off she went. And then it became clear really quickly that this horse was not meant for my daughter. My daughter's a very good rider, and Spirit is kind of no nonsense, kind of like me. And in that way,
yeah,
right? Like we're not finessed, right?
And I remember,
yeah, right. And so, so I thought, oh wow, I'm meant to have this horse, right? And then he's an interesting guy, right? He's very focused, a very good leader. You only know he's a leader when he needs to be. He's an impeccable leader, actually. And in the way that I strive for, right? That concept of just being so within yourself until you need to actually facilitate or manage something, right? Mm-hmm. It's a worthy example that he sets. However, he is also a horse, and this one day he bucked my butt off, right? So I'm riding, and I could always feel he'd be like, I want to go this way. And I'd be like, I want to go this way. I want to go this way. I want to go this way. And so one day he's like, off you go. And sure enough, I fell off. And so it hurts. I don't know if you've ever fallen off a horse. It hurts, right?
I can imagine that.
It hurts. Ouch. Like you hit the ground and that's that. So I thought, oof, and I hadn't really keyed into, I mean, I'd done some work in other areas where I'm always asked to speak at events. I'm always, asked to be the MC at weddings, and people want me to marry them, funerals, family gatherings. I'm always the one that tends to be MCing. But I hadn't really tuned into that concept of holding a really big space that way. So what happened was I was, every time I'd go to ride him, I'd think, geez, I hope he doesn't buck me off. And all I was really doing was sending him a perfect picture of him bucking me off. And he has no judgment. And so he'd be like, okay, lady, no problem. I'll buck you off, no problem. And I'd be like, you're a problem horse. I love you, but you're a problem horse, when I was actually the problem, right? And so this concept of problem horses, like I do work now with horses having people problems, and there's no problem horses. And it's always in the communication, and it's always our journey as people, right? And so anyways, that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it's true. After working with the herd so much, like, yes, 100%.
Yeah. And the only time I found that difference was one horse, and he was orphaned and raised by humans, and so he'd taken on human behaviors. But that's the only time I've ever noticed the horse being the problem in that way, right? Mm-hmm. And so anyway, so I had this problem horse. I was like, I love this horse, but he's a problem horse. He bucks me, right? And so this friend of mine said, oh, you've got to meet, I don't know if I think I can mention. So her name is Tina. And so she said, you've got to meet Tina. And I was like, oh, okay, and I'm committed to this horse. So, okay. And so my friend across the street from me had a round pen, and Tina came up to have a session with me and my problem horse, and who she was aware wasn't the problem either, right? So as I'm walking down the road toward them, I'm leading my problem horse because I'm committed and I'm going to help him, right? And as I'm doing that, I'm starting to cry hysterically. Like I could barely breathe. I was sobbing so deeply. And one part of me was thinking, what is going on? Am I losing my mind? But the other part of me, again, was committed to helping my problem horse. And I don't care what I've looked like or how I'm doing this, I'm going to help my problem horse, right? So companion animals will often bring us to these situations where we're given the opportunity to really look within, to really step into that place, right? And that's what was happening. So as I'm walking closer to her, she sort of stood up from the car, and she turned to me and she said, yes, I've missed you too. Now take it down a notch. So basically she was acknowledging that we're same star family, or however you choose to express those common lineages that we all have from the beautiful structure of 7, or however you choose to define that concept that we are all one. And so then I spent a couple of hours just crying, and Spirit spent that couple of hours just standing in front of me, and Tina spent those couple of hours facilitating. So that was the start of me starting to do this work. And I think there's probably still people in Cobble Hill, where I used to live, who talk about the crazy horse lady, because I was so enamored. Once I opened that door, I was so enamored with the work that Spirit and I would just walk the roads, and I'd be like, hi, my horse would really like to check out your chakras. Would you be okay with that? Like I just hit the ground running, right? And it became, we talk about the pendulum coming back and forth. I was a little out here with that, right? And had to come back to a place of balance. But I was so completely enamored with this brave new world that had presented itself, and Spirit and I. And started basically doing the work there, Leo, just where I would ask people to come over and they would just sit on a chair, and Spirit and I would approach them. I'd have Spirit in a halter, and I would just take it from there based on the knowledge and the tools I had been building in other ways, work around chakras and auras and energy fields and languaging, right? And providing people with this voice that they need in order to find their own place of healing, right? And so then that was the start of everything here. And everything that I have would not have occurred if I had not have trusted my path and in the moment just really gone for it. At any point along the way, you've got to start speaking your truth or praying, however you choose to describe that conversation with the divine, of which we are, because we're all one, right? And so there's this concept, you're reaching this point of completely expressing the internal external, and rather than all of a sudden making that an opportunity to modify your behavior or modify your plans based on the external, it is this opportunity to leap off and to forge your own path, right? And to have true compassion for yourself or others, where you are aware that you might have some judgment, some self-judgment or judgment of them, and that they're going to have the same, and that it's none of your business, right? They're absolutely entitled to their own connection to their own process and how it impacts and interacts with one's own, right? So everything that I have, whether it's a labyrinth, 6 horses, a round pen, anything like that, it would not have occurred if I had misunderstood that opportunity and at any point sort of stepped out of my center. And a common way for me around that is 2 things. So one thing, for example, with this, the horse program that I have, is one of the goals is to create community, right? So that people feel supported and that there's this back and forth, and the beauty of how the horses work. And the horses work in this beautiful back and forth way. They don't get done to, and they don't like doing to, they like doing with. And that resonates fully with me as well, right? And so this beautiful concept of creating space for that to occur is really important to me. And all these tools that have come up, of which I am one, like we're all tools, and I mean that in the most holistic, integrative sense, for our own betterment and the betterment of others. And I was just talking with a drumming group this morning about this, and I said, because they were talking about how I was in the center of, in this drumming, I'll go in this, people take turns going in the center and people drum. And a lot of times people were like, oh, you just got to receive, you can't drum in return, you need to stand there with your drum, which is beautiful if that's how you work, right? But how I work is I need to be drumming at the same time because I want to create this doing with, this synergy. So for my unique way of creating space in this world for myself and others is about interaction, community. I'm not interested in this for myself. For some people, they would like to just come out here and spend time by themselves. But I'm truly energized and truly meeting my life path when I'm having this flow with other people here, right? So when I was talking to the drumming group about this today, I said, I need to tell you guys something, is that when I'm in the center of the circle drumming, I'm not in a place of denying receiving. I'm in a place of fully receiving, because how I receive is this back and forth with, right? And if I'm just supposed to stand there and not drum, that to me isn't how I receive, right? And so there's this opportunity here to figure that out.
Yeah, I love that. Because even with money, I find if you're only taking and receiving, you're not in flow with the universe. So I always like to give at least 10% of what I earn or manifest or attract away. So it's that, like you said, ebb and flow, give and take. It doesn't feel like true receiving if I'm kind of holding it all tight to my chest. You know? Yeah. It's like when I feel guided to, here's this donation and I'm going to donate to this cause. And, so for everything, I think relationship, work life, you know? There needs to be that give and take. So I love that.
And it has to feel right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And that comes from the internal, right? So that's that beauty of that, right? Is that ability to do that, to build on that, and to allow yourself to in a place of non-judgment, right?
Yeah. And I think the horses really bring that up too, because whenever I work with them, it's like they're not going to do what you are trying to get them to do if you're not in this like I'm receptive but intentional space. It's very
you have to have
balanced.
You have to have your goal, and that always has to be there, whether you're choosing to interact with the horse or see why they're not walking or whatever. You still have to have one aspect of yourself on your goal. And they're really good at showing us when we've lost track of that goal. And for a lot of folk, that's what happens. You're like, oh, the horse stopped. I better focus all my attention. And that's, if we take that out to life, right? We always need to be keeping our one aspect, a part of ourselves on that goal or what we're choosing to manifest or what our life path is, and not be diverted fully by whatever comes our way, right? To recognize that it's part of that flow. Yeah. So with the horse, for example, if you're going to be walking the labyrinth to the center of the labyrinth, and that's what you're going to be doing, and the horse stops, if you're turning to the horse and you've completely disconnected from going to the center of the labyrinth, they won't go, right? They won't go because they're perfectly happy just to stand with you. The other way too is I'll have people, they'll be walking and all of a sudden the horse will stop, and it's always because of a couple of different things, but one of the main reasons is because they've been like, oh, look at the pretty flower. They've literally lost that connection, even a small smidge of connection on their goal. They've lost it. And the horse is like, okay, I'll stop, because they don't care. They're happy just to stand with you, right?
Yeah.
The other thing horses do really well is this: they do not like duality, because as prey animals, duality to them is that tiger, walking beside the field, like, I'm just walking, when really they want them for breakfast, right? And so you look at this and think, when as humans, what happens is I might be like, hey Leo, how you doing? And you might be like, I'm awesome. And yet inside you've had a pretty crap morning and something's gone and happened, and you're upset, but you're putting on the duality, right? Because that's how we function.
Are socialized.
Yeah. And so, and it eases things and, that kind of thing. So I get it. And horses don't like it. They're so fully in the moment. As prey animals are absolutely in the moment. And when we are predators, even if we're not eating meat, they experience us as predators, right? Mm-hmm. We have claws, we have a direct gaze, we have, the eyes, all that stuff, right? We have, all these different aspects of ourselves. And if we eat meat, they can sure tell. But even if not, we have hardwired reactions that are very predator. And so, not to get too focused on that, but that's what informs them helping us to look at our duality, right? So this one little girl, she was here with the family, and so you could tell she just did not want to do this. The rest of the family was like, yahoo, let's lead the horses through the labyrinth, and she was just like, I don't want to. So of course she picked Spirit, because he's like that. I don't want to. Like I can only walk him in the labyrinth if I dance and sing, because he's so connected with the joy factor. And that's the thing about horses, right? Is they're so connected to the joy factor. So they really are in the moment that way as prey animals. But anyway, so she's walking him and he's not moving, because of course he can tell right away she's not into it. So then she's feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm disappointing my family. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. All these messages coming up for her that she's been told since birth, right? So here's this little wild thing who just wants to do what she wants to do and just skip through life. And she's wanting to do what her family wants. And then on top of that, she's not doing it. And then Spirit is like immobile, and I couldn't even get him to move. And so that says something. So I thought, what's going on here? Because I went to help her. And so I turned to her and I said, what do you want to do? And she said, well, I just want to let him go. And I just want to meet him in the center of the labyrinth. And I just want to do what I want to do. And I said, in so many words, I'm paraphrasing. And so I said, well, take his halter off. And so she took his halter off, and she was skipping along the labyrinth, and Spirit just walked over the rocks and stood in the center and waited for her. And so there's these moments of beautiful synchronicity. Yeah, he waited for her. He's like, okay, I can do that. So when she was connected with what she wanted to do, that was such a clear picture. And he's like, all right, I can do that. And so he came out here and waited for her, and she did exactly what she wanted. She skipped through the labyrinth the way she wanted, up over the rocks and back over the rocks, because there's no wrong way to walk a labyrinth. And then she met Spirit in the middle, and off they went on their day, right? So
Aw, I love that. And like, what a beautiful lesson to learn at such a young age, because I feel like so many of us are told those things growing up. You know, you don't want to disappoint your parents or your brother or your sister, like your teacher, whoever, that you kind of get indoctrinated into like, well, if everyone else is doing it this way, you have to do it that way too.
Yeah.
And most things in life, it's not really that way. Most things in life you can figure out your own path.
Yeah, absolutely. I have another young gal who comes here, and really she was born knowing. And so what I mean by that is she was born knowing. And so here she is in this baby body. She can't talk, she can't write, she can't do all the things that she knows already she can do. And so she came to work with the herd, and she's been coming for a number of years now, and she's learning how to ride Sorrento with no reins and no saddle based on groundwork. So getting really proficient in her groundwork, and then working on that picturing concept, right? Where she's picturing him and her riding together, right? And that is such a worthy goal, because her discipline in her mind now is just, it's really something to see. So she's really stepped into that, right? And I always like to see the herd working with someone like that. And I love the herd working with anyone. And there's times like that where I see the profound difference the herd has made in their lives, right? So this was a young girl who was not functioning. She was not functioning in systems. She was not functioning in schools, in family, any of those structures. They absolutely weren't working for her. She was absolutely fed up with this whole 3D reality, right? And the herd and her, they're just like this, you know, they all love her and she loves them, and it's that width we were talking about, right? They work like that.
Yeah, they're amazing. I love them.
I know,
like
right?
my favorite place on earth, pretty much, is like here with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and when people on the autism spectrum, if you want to use definitions, when they come here, I basically just stay out of the way, because evolutionarily speaking, horses stayed visual and we went verbal. And so folk on the spectrum are often visual. And so they're visual communicators, proficient, right? And so the horses are, and the folk on the spectrum are. And so it's really beautiful to see that interaction as well, how empowering it can be for the horses and the people, right? So,
yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I love too that like it does get you out of duality.
Yep.
Like so much. Like you have to be focused in a different way.
I always love, Leo, how you describe some of your experiences here. So I don't know if you wanted to do that at all.
Yeah.
I just really, I really love your way with language and how you're able to communicate your process. And I always look forward to your quotes or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. The interesting thing I found about working with spirit horses or medicine horses is like really how much they are almost like a mirror. Like I always, when I'm trying to describe what I'm doing here, people will think because I journey into the spirit world that I'm just journeying and working with horse spirits. And I'm like, no, like it's a real horse in the 3D that has a spiritual impact on us or a healing impact on us. But like when I've worked with them, I don't even know how many times, like a good handful. I try and come a couple times a year if I can. They really just bring up all your crap in the like most supportive, loving, positive way possible, so it's not overwhelming. But they're like, I describe them like a mirror almost, where it's like the things that you've been kind of pretending aren't really there or aren't really a problem or aren't really something that you should look at, they will just gently express that to you as you try and walk with them or work with them.
Sometimes not so gently.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's, for me, it's always, I want to like pet the horse, have the horse's like little velvet nose on my shoulder. It's just, I get so cuddly that I lose track of my goals so often. And I find that I do that in life as well. So there's such a good reset moment for me. The last time I was here, it was like every single thing that Spirit did, because I was working with Spirit, really went back to kind of how I was relating to life and manifesting. And I was thinking of getting into acting again, and I wasn't really sure if that was like the right path for me, so to speak. And it was like everything that Spirit did was a metaphor for how I was approaching life and how I could make it easier on myself if I just got out of that duality, kept my focus on where I wanted to go, but enjoyed the process. Because like Halliday said, Spirit's not going to go anywhere. Nope. You're not dancing or singing or being a little bit of a goof. And I definitely get too serious sometimes. So yeah. And even the first time I came here, I'd just gone through like what I describe as like a mental breakdown. I'd been harassed at my job. I'd taken a month off work. I got so sick. I think I hit an exit point in my life where I could have I could have chosen to stay on Earth, or I could have left with that sickness if I had decided to. So I decided to stay. My life was in shambles. We came here and had the most amazing experience with Sorrento. So Sorrento was the first one I worked with, and he's the heart of the herd, right?
He is the heart of the herd.
Yeah. And I definitely needed that. So
right.
He was so sweet. He kept his nose on my shoulder pretty much the whole time we walked through. So it's like this little like velvety nudge. But if I got too distracted by how sweet he was, he wouldn't move. So still kind of keeping your goals. And yeah, then that evening we met up with Anna Lurai, who I've interviewed on the podcast and who you know as well. And I got offered a trip to Mexico, and life came together, and I had a spiritual awakening. Like, it was like, this was like the thing that initiated this like series of spiritual events for me that was like a huge shift in my paradigm in my life and how I function. And the horses were a huge part of that. And whenever I'm feeling off or scattered, or I need to ground myself in like who I really am, coming here always does that. So
nice.
Yeah. And you're always so lovely too. Like,
Aww.
It wouldn't be the same without you here. So yeah. But yeah, they're really good at, I always say, like, bringing up what you need to know. Yeah. And it's really gentle in the way that, like you said, they're non-judgmental. So instead of a friend being like, look, you deflect a lot, or like you never follow through, or you need to lighten up, or whatever, it doesn't sound judgmental coming from the horses, because they're doing that flow with you. They're just doing the same thing with you on your journey to show you, to help you, to bring awareness to it, so you can take those lessons and take them out of the labyrinth or out of the experience with them, and transition that or translate that into how you live your life. But it's also just this beautiful, magical moment of walking around with these gorgeous, amazing beings. So
right. I agree. I think what do I think about it? I think that that's beautiful. So I'm just going to sit with that for a couple seconds. Thank you for that. That's what I find too, and this is what I'm exploring these days, is I'm so engaged in this back and forth that it's really good for me to be, as a friend of mine would say, be patient and to just fully receive. Doesn't mean that I'm, as I was saying earlier, doesn't mean that I'm not in movement, but that I'm slowing down that flow enough so that I can engage in a patient way with what's being presented. Because when you were speaking, I was like, what? And then I want to get right in there, right? And so just to be able to stop and to be patient, and patient with myself and patient with the process, and really on a frequency or vibration level experience what you're presenting and to fully savor it, right? And so that's one of the beautiful lessons of the horses for me as well, is, and the perfection of nature really, is this ability to be in the moment, right? So my quick mind and my, this beautiful aspect of myself where I'm wanting to be very in whatever's happening, and just recognizing, the value of other ways, right? And so this beautiful ability that the horses have to really be in the moment and to savor the moment. And that gentleness you're talking about, I think that comes a lot from that ability to be contained the way they are. And for horses, what I've discovered is it's, you have an intention and a process and gratitude. Really, they do all this work for gratitude. They love joy. They're creatures of the moment, and they love joy because they don't know if they're going to be somebody's breakfast the next minute, right? So they savor it. So, and they have a hardwired difference that's helpful, right? So for example, if you and I were to go to a water hole and you got eaten by a tiger, I'd have a story about it. I might not ever go back to the water hole, and here'd be why, and I might have, PTSD about it or whatever's going on for me, and it would be this very complex big thing, right? or I'd be in denial, or whatever my response would be, right? I'm going to go to 18 holes, or, there'd be some sort of, forward or backward, not in the moment behavior. Whereas a horse just wouldn't go to the water hole. Like they're not invested in the story, right? They're really not, right? So they wouldn't be like, oh, don't go to that water hole. They'd be like, I don't go to that water hole. In this moment, here and now, I don't go there, right? And so that informs the space they hold for us.
Yeah. And when it comes to manifesting or healing or anything, really what is most important is right here and now.
You got it.
Especially being like a quantum multidimensional being is like really like the future and the past is very fluid once you get into like I'm used to going to the Akashic Records, like that perspective. It's like it's all kind of happening all at once. But we have these stories, so we spend so much of our present living in the past or worrying about the future that most of us actually aren't like present for most of our lives. But I think that's where the real healing happens, because if you can even take a breath and be like, I am okay right now.
Exactly.
Like, it's so much more relaxing than like stressing. It's like, oh, I've dealt with things in the past, so if anything comes up, I will handle it. But for now, we're just going to put that on the back burner. Like we don't have to worry about it.
And there's, the couple different things too, just around the horses around this too, is this concept of past and future just being dimensions, right? So if I'm connected, if I'm a multidimensional being, what if what I consider past or future is literally just another dimension that I can choose to visit or not, right? I can choose to expand that frequency, or I can choose to compress it. And if I'm compressing it, then I need to be expanding it with something else, right? So what if, when we look at this concept of, because it's easy to say like, oh, there's no such thing in past and future. It's all in the moment. It's very Einstein-ish, right? It's like, oh, everything happening right now. And that's true. But it's also, we do experience what could be considered the past or the future, right? So what about if instead of a timeline, those are, absolute dimensions that exist that we choose to visit or not visit?
Yeah.
I mean, really, right?
Right. And then if you're struggling in something, what if you compress that struggle of that potential future and decide, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to turn my attention and I'm going to figure out how to start thriving, figure out how to start feeling better, figure out how to
go for what you want rather than focusing on what you don't want. So that's that constant, whatever languaging you choose to use, if you're choosing to compress a certain frequency, it's not going to ever disappear. So if you are, and it can be a behavior, like addiction sits there, right? We're choosing to compress an addictive behavior. We need to be expanding another frequency. Otherwise, that pattern, that frequency, that vibration is going to want to expand over and over again, right? So I don't know. I think it's worthy of looking at. And I think where a lot of people get derailed, or what I've noticed, is they're focusing on what they don't want. Oh, I don't want to do that anymore, or I don't want that to happen. And really what's presenting right now is this concept in a real visceral way. What is it I want? And I mean visceral because we're literally creator beings, right? Absolutely. And so full on right now. And as you know, with this Lionsgate portal and stuff happening, it's even more so.
Things are cooking,
Things are cooking, right? And so it's even, it's not out there. It's in here. When we look at this immobility in our lives, whether it's, the sacred masculine or the sacred feminine, this concept of flow, right? Of, this sacred feminine, immobility being not enough structure, and in the masculine being too much structure, and getting a flow out of that, so we're creating our own paradise on earth, our own golden self, right? It's become this internal process to a really deep gut level. It's, this concept of like, ascending out here or whatever. No, folks, it's here, right? Here's where we do it. Here's where unity consciousness sits, right? And then, out it goes, right?
And that's interesting because I really started manifesting quicker when I started doing it from my gut, from my heart. Like whenever I work with a client now, I'm always like, your power's here. And it's always like between kind of, if you're familiar with the chakras, like I would say like your root or sacral area all the way up to like your heart. And like, yes, your throat can help create, yes, you can think about concepts, but really the mind is duality from my experience. You have two hemispheres. That's where you do all your worrying. It feels very fluttery and up here. But if you get into, I call it like your portal or like your inner wisdom, that's really like the connection you have to unity, to one, to all that is, and that piece of creator within you. So then when you speak from that place, from activating that inner wisdom or source or whatever you want to call it, your inner power, it happens really quickly if you're receptive to it.
Yeah. And, if we're going to talk chakras, it's so cool because what I experienced before as the solar plexus chakra and the heart chakra, where the solar plexus would cup or be this golden grail cupping the heart chakra, which allowed, to be loving in a strong way or compassionate. And then that support allowing the green of the heart chakra to come down and support the solar plexus chakra. So it created this beautiful cup, right? Mm-hmm. And what I'm noting is that that's expanding now, and it's cupped below the sacral chakra. Mm-hmm. And so we're bringing that gold everywhere. So it's like the golden orange and the golden yellow and the golden green. And so that cup or that grail or that cosmic goldness is expanding through a structure like our chakras, right? Mm-hmm. So to whatever languaging we're choosing to use, it's that expansion and the goldness and the flow, right? Yeah. Rather than, and just allowing those immobilities to come forward and to process them in the moment, the way the horses would, right? Yeah. And even if we're walking the labyrinth, just to come back to that, you come across a pile of poo in the labyrinth, does it stop you in your tracks? Do you walk through it? Do you wait for someone to scoop it out of the way for you? Do you have a temper tantrum at it? Do you have some judgment of yourself and others? Oh, why can't I walk through the poo? Or why isn't someone coming to scoop it for me? Something as simple as that. So nature over and over again, I'm getting intense now, but
I love it.
Nature over and over again gives us these beautiful opportunities to come into appropriate stewardship of ourselves, right? And then when we're in an appropriate stewardship of ourselves, then we're truly impeccable stewards of the perfection of nature, right? Yeah. In my opinion, right? So, yeah.
I love that. Yes.
But it's interesting when we're talking about chakras that you're experiencing that too, right? And mm-hmm. I love how there's as many different ways to describe the beautiful ascension processes or unity consciousness processes as there is beings, individuals, right? And what I'm noticing is that as this expands and these opportunities expand in the moment, and this again is connected with the equine nation in the sense that we're so quick to compartmentalize horses, for example. I was quick to compartmentalize Spirit as a problem horse, rather than looking at that situation in the beginning of our connection as an opportunity to look within. If I had stopped and looked within, or if I'd been more connected to that ability of mine to hold a very big space, which is a natural ability I have, and it's reflected in every aspect of my life. If I had been able to do that, that could have evolved differently. Who knows, right? Not bad or good, just interesting, right? And so what I'm discovering right now, that's happening globally. People are being given these opportunities to come out of polarity or to come out of the either or thinking. And any issue these days, it's the same. Whether you're pro or con or whatever, those extremes are not helpful. They're just not helpful. What's the middle path? The middle path is the golden paradise that you're creating within. How do you get there? Well, the horses have shown me the perfection of nature, the trees, everything has shown me the middle path, right? Allowing myself to be out in these extremes, but then always coming to that place of the golden paradise within, that once I'm in that place, then can flower or bloom like a rose and allow that to be expressed and enjoyed by the outer, right? Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And I think, that's really where we're going to see the most transformation, for our own lives, but also the collective is getting out of that really dualistic, really ego driven or easily kind of commandeered by fear place into no, I said this is my truth. And so therefore the universe is effortlessly responding to it. It's just
well said.
Yeah. Because when I've manifested things like this, so quickly, from that place, it's I can almost feel the universe shifting and starting to magnetize things towards me. And all I have to do is receive it at that moment and hold that power long enough that I know it's happening. And then it happens, kind of a thing. And it's such a paradigm shift from when I used to script things out or have watch The Secret on repeat, or not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's a small piece, I think, of manifesting, or a small piece of getting empowered. And really, once you feel all I have to do is be, after stating this very clear intention from a very aligned place, that's when the magic happens. But I think on a collective level, we could do that too, right?
Totally. And the perfection of nature can lead the way. They're awesome companions on that path. I mean, something as simple as, you know, our need, as you say, watching, you know, something in repeat. I've done it. Everyone's done it, right? You know, it's because we're structured. We like our definitions. We're storytellers by nature, right? However we choose to express that. For something like a horse is not. So, for example, if I'm in a horse field and I bring a bucket in and I place it on the ground, I'm like, that's a bucket. That is a bucket. That is a bucket. But that definition limits it, right? It's a bucket in this dimension, in this reality, in this moment. But to a horse, it's never a bucket. It's never a bucket because they interpret and feel things like that energetically. So if I put a bucket in a field, a horse will come into that field and they'll be like, whoa, that's an energy that's different than it was yesterday. And until I check it out, it could be a predator, right? So they don't define a bucket as a bucket. They don't define a Halliday as a Halliday. I'm an energy that interfaces with other energy that they perceive in a way that allows them to be in the moment with it. When I decide that something is a bucket, I learned that in the past dimension. You know, I learned, you know, I have an expectation that I can pour water into it in the future if I wanted to, blah, 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 right? But if I approach that bucket as energy that's interconnected with the energy around it, and that could do anything and be anything, well, that's fun.
Yeah. Right?
And that's very horse-like.
Yeah.
They don't define. So our need to define is a cool thing. It's allowed us to create tools and stories and all sorts of stuff. And the other aspect of it is it does limit. When we define something, when we're watching something over and over, but then we never leap off of it, we never, and you have, so you know what I'm saying, right? So, but you know, that opportunity, we become locked into a definition that's meant to be a leaping off point, right? So it's meant to be a leaping off point into the divine, into joy, into bliss. And any structure like that, in my opinion, is meant to do that, right? Yeah. It's meant to support us to leap off. Our stories are meant to support us to leap off into the non-story, into the no thing, right? Into the beauty and bliss of divinity, of that golden self, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And even in like relationships, if you're like this is a bucket, or like this is the relationship, they've presented me with this energy once, so that's what the energy they are is. We're such like
multidimensional,
multidimensional like fluid beings that it's like, if I was grumpy that day with, let's say, my brother, right, like, and he takes offense to it, and then he just paints me as that the rest of my life, like we have a much bigger, more multifaceted relationship than that I'm glad my relationship with my brother isn't like, you're a bucket, you're a grouch, like, you know, like, but I think we do that sometimes. We get hurt by someone once. Maybe we're even misinterpreting their energy or their intention. Maybe we aren't.
A story.
Yeah.
Perhaps we're making a story about them, right? So.
As maybe they spilled coffee on themselves and they have a burn, and that's why they're scowling. It's nothing to do with you, but you never asked, you know, right? Sometimes we're spot on and our intuition is telling us the right thing, but oftentimes I think we stop giving people the space to grow and change because we compress the future and let the past expand, kind of a thing. It's like, well, they're always going to be that way. And there's something to be said for protecting your heart and having boundaries, but think of all the opportunities you might miss with someone if you never give them the chance to like be a different energy point in a different point in time.
And that's not external, that's internal. That's an internal process, and yet we externalize it all the time, right? Working in the round pen with horses and people is a really good indicator of that. So anytime we're working in the round pen with a horse, it's this opportunity to have, like, to create a book. And there's different chapters in that book. So you'll have a horse, and what happens is we create a story. You know, here's the physical indicator that I'm looking for from this horse. They need to do this activity in this way in order for my accomplishment, to have this accomplished. When in reality, what it always is an opportunity to have an intention, a process, and an ending. So say, for example, I want the horse to trot around. My intention is, okay, this horse is going to trot around the round pen one perfect circle. They're gonna be looking toward me. They're gonna be paying attention. There's all these physical indicators that you look for, right? And so I'm locked into that because that's my story. That's my bucket. That's my whatever it is, right? Yeah, you're gonna draw, and that I engage in a struggle with this horse instead of looking at the horse and entering and engaging in a way that allows both of us to be sentient beings. And what I mean by that is that, say for example, the horse decides to canter. Well, I have an opportunity to escalate, right? I have an opportunity to change what my expectations are of the session, right? I have an opportunity to work with. I have an opportunity to expand the chapter, right, before I end it, right? I have all these opportunities to be flexible and to be in the moment and to be out of structure, even though the round pen is a really explicit structure, right? And so at that moment, I get to decide, okay, so do I slow my movement down in the hopes that the horse will move down? How do I interact with this other being in a way that allows both of us to decide where the ending of that chapter is, right? And so, one chapter could be 2 seconds long. The indicator I'm looking for in my connection with that other being is 2 seconds on into the process, or it could be 2 hours. Sorrento is a prime example of this, right? So as an animal communicator, it's hilarious because when he first came here, he had really given up on people. He had decided that we were kind of all jerks. and it was because for a number of different indicators. And so for him, what happened I'd go to give him a leaf of hay and he'd picture stumping my head into the ground and I'd picture him just having the hay. And so he would treat any stimulus as a reason to freak out. If it was a leaf of hay or me walking toward or another horse walking toward, it was always an alarming thing for him. So there's a number of different ways to deal with that. But for someone like him who had kind of lost, you never want to disappoint him if you possibly can, because he absolutely still has that hardwired response to it, right? Mm-hmm. So for example, I would go into the languaging of the herd, and so he would freak out about the leaf of hay, and I'd be like, dude, that's disruptive to the herd. So I'd chase him out of the herd, right? Now, hardwired wise, a horse will come back about 20-ish meters when they're ready to come back into the herd. And at that point, we need to invite them back into the herd, right? Usually go and touch their shoulder or whatever. So if I go to touch his shoulder and he turns and be like freaking out again, like, oh my gosh, I'd be like, okay, dude, off you go again, right? So not getting mad, not holding a grudge. See, horses don't hold a grudge the way that we can, right? They don't have the same story, right? And so if that took 2 hours to do, that's what it would take, right? So eventually he's going to allow me just to touch him on the shoulder and invite him back into the herd. He's going to come and eat his hay quietly. At any point in that process, it's up to me not to invest in a story, not to hold a grudge, not to get angry or, upset or that type of thing, and to focus on that connection with him that ends the chapter of that book so that we can write another one together, right? And there's all sorts of different ways to do that here, right? All sorts of different ways to do that with horses. And they'll express their immediate response to your story, right? I don't know how else to explain that. Is that?
I love that.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening today. If you feel drawn to, please make sure you share this episode with a friend, share the podcast with a friend. The more people we can reach, the more love and light we can spread. Totally no pressure though. If you feel like booking a session with Halliday in person, if you're on Vancouver Island, Canada, all of that will be linked down below. And if you feel like doing a distance session with me, Lionheart Leo, I do past life work and I also have some classes as well. So feel free to check all that out in the description wherever you're listening to or watching this from. Thanks again to Nine Life Music for the beautiful song that we get to use for our intro. And I'll see you in the next episode. Lots of love.